The night is quiet. A soft wind moves gently across a wide and endless desert. The air is warm, but not harsh. It carries a stillness that feels almost timeless, as if the world itself has slowed down. Above, the sky stretches far and deep. Countless stars rest quietly in the darkness, shining with a calm and steady glow. They have been there for longer than memory, watching over the land below without hurry. And beneath those stars, along the slow and steady flow of the Nile River, an ancient world breathes softly. This is Egypt. A place where the river gives life, where the sand holds stories, and where people once lived in quiet rhythm with the land, the sky, and something greater than both. In this world, the day begins slowly. The first light of morning spreads across the horizon in soft shades of gold. The river reflects the sky like a mirror, barely moving. Birds begin their gentle calls. Reeds sway along the water's edge. In small villages made of mud brick and simple wood, people wake without rush. They step outside into the cool morning air. Some carry clay jars to the river. Others prepare grain for bread. The smell of fresh earth and water fills the space between homes. Life here is simple, slow, repeated each day in familiar ways. And yet, beneath this quiet routine, there is a deeper understanding, one that touches every part of life. The people of ancient Egypt do not see the world as empty or silent. To them, everything is alive. The river is not just water. The sun is not just light. The sky is not just space. All things are connected to unseen beings. These beings are the gods. They are not distant or removed. They are present in the rising sun, in the flowing river, in the fertile soil, and in the quiet darkness of night. The people feel them in the wind. They sense them in the stillness. They honor them in simple, daily acts. And so, to understand ancient Egypt, one must gently step into this way of seeing. A way where the world is filled with meaning. A way where each moment is watched over by something calm, steady, and eternal. Among these many gods, there are a few whose presence feels especially close. One of them rises each morning. Before the villages fully wake, before the workers begin their tasks, before the heat of the day settles over the land, there is a quiet moment. A moment when the sky begins to glow. The darkness fades slowly, not all at once, but in a soft and patient way. And then, at the edge of the horizon, a warm light appears. This light is not just the sun. It is Ra. Ra is the sun god. But to the people, he is more than a distant star in the sky. He is the bringer of light. The keeper of order. The steady force that returns each day, without fail. Each morning, as the sun rises, it is said that Ra is traveling across the sky in his solar boat. He moves slowly from east to west, watching over the world below. The farmers in the fields feel his warmth on their backs. The children playing near the river see his light dancing on the water. The elders sitting quietly outside their homes close their eyes and rest in his presence. Ra does not rush. He follows the same path each day. And in this repetition, there is comfort. Because as long as Ra rises, the world remains in balance. But the people also understand something else. They know that each night, when the sun disappears, Ra does not simply vanish. He continues his journey. He travels through the dark underworld. A place of silence and shadow. A place where danger moves quietly. There, during the long hours of night, Ra must face a great serpent known as Apophis. This serpent represents chaos. It seeks to stop the sun. To bring darkness that never ends. And so, each night, Ra must pass through this challenge. He is not alone. Other gods travel with him, helping to protect the light. Together, they move through the darkness. And when morning comes again, and the sun rises once more, the people feel a quiet sense of relief. Balance has returned. Order remains. Life continues. In this gentle cycle of day and night, the presence of Ra becomes something steady and dependable. Like the rhythm of breathing. Like the slow movement of the river. And so, the people honor him. Not with loud voices or sudden actions. But with quiet rituals. A small offering placed on a stone. A whispered word at sunrise. A moment of stillness as the light touches the earth. And in these small acts, there is a deep and lasting connection. But Ra is not the only presence in this world. There are others who shape the land in quieter, more hidden ways. Along the banks of the Nile, where the soil is dark and rich, another story unfolds. Each year, the river rises. The water slowly spreads across the land, covering the fields in a calm and gentle flood. It does not destroy. It renews. When the waters recede, they leave behind fertile soil. Soft. Dark. Full of life. The farmers return to their work. They press seeds into the earth. They wait. And in time, green shoots appear. This cycle repeats, year after year. And within it, the people feel the presence of Osiris. Osiris is the god of the afterlife. But he is also the god of renewal. Of life that returns. Of cycles that never truly end. His story is one of quiet change. Of loss, and then return. It is said that Osiris was once a king. A gentle ruler who brought order and knowledge to the land. He taught people how to grow crops. How to live together in peace. How to respect the balance of the world. But his story is not without sorrow. There was another, his brother, Set. Set was different. Where Osiris was calm, Set was restless. Where Osiris brought life, Set carried the energy of storms and dry winds. In time, Set grew jealous. And in a moment that echoes through the quiet spaces of this ancient world, Osiris was taken from life. The story is told softly. Not with sharp edges, but with a kind of distant sadness. Osiris did not remain gone. Through care, through devotion, through forces both seen and unseen, he returned not to the world of the living, but to another place. A place beyond. He became the ruler of the afterlife. A calm and steady presence for those who had passed on. And so, Osiris came to represent something deeply comforting. Not an end, but a continuation. A quiet journey into another form of being. For the people of ancient Egypt, death is not feared in the way one might expect. It is understood as part of a larger rhythm. Like the setting sun. Like the retreating flood waters. Life changes form. It does not disappear. And in this belief, there is peace. When a person's life comes to its natural end, their body is carefully prepared. Not quickly, not carelessly. But slowly. With attention. With respect. The process is gentle and deliberate. Cloth is wrapped around the body. Layer by layer. Each fold placed with care. Each movement steady and calm. These wrappings are not just for preservation. They are part of a journey. A preparation for what comes next. Because the soul, in the belief of these people, continues. It travels. It enters a new space. And there, in the quiet halls of the afterlife, it meets Osiris. He does not judge with anger. He does not rush. He sits in stillness. A presence of balance. Of quiet truth. And in this meeting, the life that was lived is gently weighed. Not in a loud or dramatic way, but in a calm and steady manner. And so, the story of Osiris becomes woven into daily life. In the planting of seeds. In the flooding of the Nile. In the careful wrapping of the dead. In the quiet hope that life continues beyond what can be seen. The days pass slowly. The river flows. The sun rises and sets. And the gods remain close. Not distant figures, but quiet companions. Felt in the warmth of the light. In the cool shade of evening. In the steady rhythm of breath. And as the night returns once more, the land grows still again. The wind softens. The stars reappear. And somewhere, beyond sight, the journey continues. The night deepens slowly. The air cools just a little more, and the sounds of the day fade into a soft and distant memory. Along the banks of the Nile, the water moves with a quiet patience, reflecting the stars above like scattered points of light resting on its surface. In the stillness, the world feels held in place. Nothing rushes. Nothing demands attention. And within this calm, the presence of the gods continues, gentle and constant. There is another figure, one whose presence is felt not in the bright light of day, but in the quiet transitions between moments. A presence that stands at the edge of life and what comes after. This is Anubis. Anubis is the guardian of the dead. But the people do not see him as something frightening. They see him as careful. As watchful. As someone who guides rather than takes. In their stories, Anubis has the head of a jackal, an animal often seen near the edges of villages and burial grounds, moving silently through the night. The jackal does not disturb. It observes. It moves with purpose, but without noise. And so, Anubis carries that same quiet energy. When a life has come to its natural end, and the body is prepared with steady hands and patient care, it is said that Anubis is present. Not in a way that can be seen clearly, but in a way that can be felt. In the calm focus of those performing the rituals. In the stillness of the room. In the slow, deliberate movements of wrapping and placing. He watches over the process, ensuring that each step is done with respect. That nothing is hurried. That nothing is forgotten. Because this preparation is important. It is not only about the body. It is about the journey that follows. The ancient Egyptians believed that each person is made of more than just flesh and bone. There are parts of the self that continue. Parts that travel. Parts that remember. And for this journey to be smooth, everything must be in balance. This is where another quiet presence becomes important. A presence that is not tied to a single place or moment, but exists as a gentle principle throughout all things. This is Ma'at. Ma'at is not a god in the same way as Ra or Osiris. She is something softer. Something more like a feeling. A sense of order. Of truth. Of balance. She is present in the way the river floods at the right time. In the way the sun rises without fail. In the way people speak honestly and treat one another with fairness. Ma'at is the natural state of things when everything is as it should be. And the people of ancient Egypt live their lives with this in mind. They do not seek loud or sudden change. They seek steadiness. They seek harmony. A farmer planting seeds in the soft earth follows Ma'at. A mother preparing bread for her family follows Ma'at. A builder placing each stone carefully, aligning it with the others, follows Ma'at. It is not something spoken about loudly. It is simply lived. And when a person's life ends, this idea of balance becomes central once more. In the quiet halls of the afterlife, there is a moment that is often described in gentle detail. A moment that feels less like judgment, and more like understanding. The heart of the person is placed on one side of a scale. On the other side rests a feather. This feather represents Ma'at. Light. Simple. Perfectly balanced. The heart is not just an organ. It is the place where memory lives. Where actions are held. Where truth resides. And so, in this calm and silent moment, the heart is weighed. Not with noise. Not with fear. But with stillness. If the heart is light, in harmony with Ma'at, then the journey continues peacefully. If it is heavy, burdened by imbalance, then the path becomes uncertain. But even this is not told with harshness. It is simply part of the natural order. And Anubis stands nearby, watching over this process. Ensuring that everything is done with care. That the balance is true. That the journey unfolds as it should. The people, in their daily lives, carry this understanding quietly. They do not speak of it constantly. But it is there, beneath their actions. In the way they treat others. In the way they move through their days. And so, life continues. Morning comes again. The soft light of Ra spreads across the land. The river glows. The fields awaken. Farmers walk slowly along narrow paths between growing crops. Their feet press gently into the damp earth. The air carries the scent of water and soil, warm and steady. In the distance, the outline of temples rises. Structures built not in haste, but over time. Stone placed upon stone. Each piece shaped and aligned with quiet precision. These temples are not loud places. They are not filled with constant movement. They are calm. Cool. Shaded from the sun. Inside, the air feels different. Still. Almost sacred in its quiet. Here, the presence of the gods feels closer. Not overwhelming. But near. Priests move slowly through these spaces. Their steps are measured. Their voices soft. They perform rituals not to demand attention, but to maintain connection. Small offerings are placed. Food. Incense. Water. These are simple things. But they carry meaning. They are gestures of respect. Of acknowledgement. Of balance. Among the many gods honored in these quiet places, there is one whose presence feels gentle and deeply human. This is Isis. Isis is often seen as a figure of care. Of protection. Of quiet strength. Her story is closely tied to Osiris. Where his story carries the weight of loss and renewal, hers carries the steady thread of devotion. It is said that when Osiris was lost, Isis searched for him. Not quickly. Not with panic. But with determination. She moved through the land with patience. Gathering what was scattered. Restoring what had been broken. And through her care, something whole was formed again. This story is not told with sharp edges. It is told like a memory. Soft. Steady. Filled with a quiet kind of love. And so, Isis becomes a symbol of that care. Of the way something can be held together, even after it has been changed. People feel her presence in moments of closeness. In the care of a parent. In the protection of a home. In the quiet strength that carries someone through difficult times. She is not distant. She is near. Felt in the small, everyday acts that bring comfort and stability. As the day moves forward, the heat grows stronger. The sun stands high in the sky. Shadows shorten. The land feels warm and still. Work continues, but at a slower pace. People rest when needed. They sit in shaded areas. They drink water. They allow the rhythm of the day to guide them. Nothing is forced. Everything follows a natural flow. And above it all, the presence of the gods remains woven into the fabric of life. Not separate. Not unreachable. But part of the same quiet world. A world where the river flows. Where the sun rises and sets. Where life begins, changes, and continues. And as the afternoon softens into evening, the light begins to fade once more. The sky shifts in color. Gold becomes orange. Orange becomes deep blue. The first stars begin to appear again. And slowly, gently, the land returns to stillness. The same stillness that held it the night before. The same stillness that will return again and again. Endlessly. Without rush. Without noise. Only quiet. Only time. Only the soft presence of something that has always been there. And always will be. Evening settles gently over the land. The last light of the sun lingers for a while, stretching across the horizon in soft, fading colors. The warmth of the day slowly begins to ease, and a cooler moves across the riverbanks, brushing softly against the reeds and the walls of quiet homes. The Nile reflects the sky once more, but now its surface is darker, calmer, like a long breath being slowly released. In the distance, a small boat drifts quietly. Its movement is almost unnoticeable. No urgency. No sound beyond the faint touch of water against wood. This slow drifting feels familiar. It echoes something deeper. A quiet reminder of journeys that never truly stop. Journeys that move not with speed, but with steady purpose. Among the many stories carried through this land, there is one that speaks of the sky itself. A story not of the sun alone, but of the vast space above it. A presence that stretches far beyond what the eye can follow. This is Nut. Nut is the sky. Not just part of it. She is the sky itself. The people imagine her as a great figure arching over the earth, her body covered in stars, her form stretching from one horizon to the other. During the day, she holds the sun within her. And as night falls, she becomes visible once more, her star-filled form gently appearing in the darkness above. There is something deeply calming in this image. The idea that the sky is not empty. That it is held. That it watches, quietly and endlessly. Each night, as people step outside their homes, they look upward. They do not see emptiness. They see Nut. They see a presence that surrounds them, protects them, and carries the rhythm of time itself. It is said that each evening, Nut swallows the sun. And each morning, she gives birth to it again. Not in a dramatic way, but in a steady, repeating cycle. A quiet pattern that never breaks. And in this pattern, there is comfort. Because it means that no matter how dark the night becomes, the light will return. Always. Below Nut, resting quietly, is the earth. This is Geb. Geb is the ground beneath every step. The soil. The rock. The fields that stretch beside the river. He is still. Unmoving. Yet full of life. The crops that grow, the trees that rise, the animals that walk all are connected to him. Where Nut arches above, Geb lies below. Together, they form a balance. Sky and earth. Above and below. Held in a quiet relationship that shapes the world. The people do not separate themselves from this. They are part of it. Their homes are built from the earth. Their food grows from the soil. Their lives unfold between sky and ground. And so, in a simple way, they exist between Nut and Geb. Between sky and earth. Between what is seen and what is felt. As night deepens, small lights begin to appear in the villages. Oil lamps flicker softly inside homes. Their glow is warm, gentle, never harsh. Families gather quietly. Some share simple meals. Bread. Vegetables. Water drawn earlier from the Nile. There is no rush in these moments. No need to fill the silence. The quiet itself is enough. Children grow drowsy. Their eyes grow heavy as they listen to the soft voices around them. Stories are sometimes told. Not loudly. Not with excitement. But in calm, steady tones. Stories of the gods. Stories of the river. Stories of the cycles that shape their world. These stories are not meant to surprise. They are meant to soothe. To remind. To gently pass knowledge from one generation to the next. In one such story, there is a figure who moves differently from the others. Not steady like Ra. Not still like Geb. Not protective like Isis. This figure carries a different energy. One that feels sharp, yet quiet. Unpredictable, yet natural. This is Set. Set is often associated with the desert. With dry winds that move across empty spaces. With storms that rise suddenly and then fade away. He is not gentle like the river. He is not steady like the sun. But he is part of the balance. Just as the desert exists beside the fertile land, Set exists beside the other gods. He represents the forces that disrupt. That shift. That challenge. But even this has a place. Because without change, nothing would move. Without contrast, nothing would be understood. The people do not speak of Set with comfort. But they do not ignore him either. They recognize his presence in the harsh wind. In the sudden storm. In the dry heat that presses against the skin. And in recognizing him, they accept that not all things are calm. Not all things are easy. Yet all things belong. This acceptance brings a quiet kind of peace. A peace that does not depend on everything being perfect. But instead comes from understanding that everything has its place. As the night continues, the villages grow still. Lamps are dimmed. Voices fade. Doors close softly. Outside, the stars shine more clearly now. The sky feels deeper. Wider. Almost endless. And somewhere within this vast darkness, the journey of Ra continues once more. Moving through the unseen. Passing through the silent world beneath. Facing what must be faced. So that morning can return again. And in this unseen journey, there are others who move quietly as well. One of them is Thoth. Thoth is a figure of thought. Of writing. Of careful observation. He is often associated with the moon, which rises softly into the night sky, offering a different kind of light. Not bright like the sun. But pale. Cool. Gentle. The kind of light that does not wake the world, but watches over it as it rests. Thoth is said to record. To observe. To keep track of what happens. Not with judgment. But with clarity. In a world guided by balance, his role is quiet but important. He does not change events. He does not interfere. He simply ensures that what is known. That nothing is lost. That everything is remembered. This idea, too, brings comfort. The thought that actions are not forgotten. That moments are held somewhere, gently, and without noise. As the moon moves slowly across the sky, its light touches the land in soft shades of silver. The river glows faintly. The fields rest. The temples stand silent. And within homes, people sleep. Their breathing slow. Their bodies still. Their minds drifting into dreams. Dreams that may carry fragments of stories. Of gods. Of rivers. Of endless skies. And in these dreams, the world continues in another form. Soft. Blended. Without edges. Without urgency. Time moves differently here. Slower. Lighter. Almost weightless. And so, the night passes. Not quickly. But gently. Like a quiet current carrying everything forward. Until, once again, the first hint of light begins to appear at the edge of the world. And the cycle begins again. The first light of morning returns in silence. It does not arrive all at once. It spreads slowly, like a thin veil of gold laid gently across the horizon. The stars begin to fade, not disappearing suddenly, but softening, as if they are stepping back to make space. The air feels cool and fresh. For a brief moment, the world rests between night and day. Between darkness and light. Between dreams and waking. And in this quiet space, the presence of the gods feels especially close. The Nile moves as it always has. Steady. Unhurried. Its surface now catching the early light, turning from deep shadow into a soft shimmer. Along its banks, the first movements of the day begin. A door opens. A footstep presses into the earth. A clay jar is lifted. Life resumes, not with noise, but with gentle intention. And as the sun rises again, Ra continues his endless journey across the sky. His light reaches the fields. It touches the walls of homes. It warms the skin. It brings clarity. But there are other gods who walk quietly within this daylight, their presence felt in smaller, more personal ways. One such presence is Hathor. Hathor carries a softness that feels almost like music. She is connected to joy. To beauty. To the quiet moments that bring a sense of ease. Not loud happiness. Not overwhelming feeling. But something gentle. Like the sound of a distant song carried by the wind. Like the comfort of shade on a warm day. Like the simple act of sitting with others in peace. She is often associated with the sky as well, but in a different way than Nut. Where Nut is vast and endless, Hathor feels close. Near. Present in human experience. In the way people connect with one another. In the way they share food. In the way they pause from work and simply exist together. There are small gatherings during the day, especially when the work allows it. People sit beneath simple coverings that block the sun. They drink. They rest. Sometimes there is music. Soft rhythms played on simple instruments. Nothing fast. Nothing sharp. Just a steady pattern that matches the rhythm of the heart. In these moments, Hathor is there. Not seen. But felt. In the calm. In the ease. In the quiet contentment that settles over the group. She reminds the people that life is not only work and duty. It is also rest. Also connection. Also gentle joy. And so, even in a world shaped by cycles and balance, there is space for softness. Space for warmth. Space for moments that do not need purpose beyond themselves. As the day continues, the work resumes. The fields stretch wide under the sun, green against the earth. Workers move slowly, tending to crops, adjusting irrigation channels, guiding the flow of water from the Nile. Their movements are practiced, learned over time, repeated across generations. There is no need to hurry. The rhythm of the land sets the pace. And within this rhythm, another presence exists. A quieter one. Less spoken of, but always near. This is Ta. Ta is the god of creation. But not in a loud or dramatic sense. He does not shape the world with sudden force. He creates through thought, through intention, through quiet design. The builders, the craftsmen, the artisans, they feel his presence. In the shaping of stone, in the carving of wood, in the careful construction of tools and structures. Each movement is deliberate. Each action guided by an understanding that creation takes time. A block of stone is not rushed into form. It is studied, touched, adjusted. Small pieces are removed slowly, until the shape reveals itself. And in this process, Ta is there. In the patience, in the focus, in the quiet satisfaction of something made well. Temples rise in this way. Not quickly, but steadily. Their walls cool to the touch. Their interiors calm and shadowed. They are not built to impress. They are built to endure. To exist as places of connection between the seen and the unseen. As the sun reaches its highest point, the heat settles over the land. It is not harsh, but it is strong. People move more slowly now. They take shelter where they can. The pace of the day softens. Even the animals grow quiet. The river continues its steady flow, unchanged. And in the distance, the desert waits. Endless. Silent. Its sands stretching far beyond what the eye can follow. This is where the presence of Set feels strongest. In the dry wind that sometimes rises. In the shifting dunes. In the emptiness that stands in contrast to the life along the Nile. Yet even here, there is balance. The desert is not an enemy. It is a boundary. A reminder. A space where life does not grow easily, but where the vastness of the world can be felt. And so, the people do not try to change it. They accept it as part of the whole. As the day begins to move toward afternoon, the light softens once more. Shadows grow longer. The heat begins to ease. The sounds of work slowly return, but at a gentler pace. Children walk along the edges of the fields. Their steps light. Their voices quiet but curious. They observe the world around them. Learning not through instruction alone, but through presence. Through watching. Through doing. Through listening. And in these small, everyday moments, the stories of the gods continue to live. Not only in words, but in actions. In habits. In the steady rhythm of life itself. As the sun begins its descent, Ra moves toward the horizon once more. His light grows softer. Warmer. The sky begins to change. Colors shift slowly. Gold to amber. Amber to deep orange. The river reflects it all. A moving mirror of the sky above. And as evening approaches again, the world prepares to rest. Not suddenly. Not completely. But gradually. As it always does. Because in this land, everything moves in cycles. Everything returns. Everything continues. And within that quiet continuation, the gods remain. Not distant. Not separate. But woven gently into every moment. like breath, like light, like time itself. The evening light fades with a quiet softness. It lingers for a while, resting gently on the edges of the land, as if it is not yet ready to leave. The warmth of the sun slowly slips away, and in its place comes a calm and cooling air that settles over the open fields. The Nile grows darker again. Its surface becomes smooth and reflective, holding the last traces of color before fully arrives. In the distance, the outlines of temples and homes soften into shadow. The world becomes quieter, slower, more still. And within this stillness, another presence begins to feel closer. A presence connected not to the sun, nor to the wide sky, but to the hidden spaces beneath. To what cannot be easily seen. This is Bastet. Bastet carries a calm, protective energy. She is often associated with the home, with quiet safety, with the gentle boundaries that keep harm away. The people see her in the form of a cat. Not a wild or distant creature, but one that lives close to them. Moving silently through rooms. Resting in warm corners. Watching without disturbance. A cat does not rush. It does not demand. It exists with quiet awareness. And so, Bastet reflects the same presence. In the homes along the Nile, where families gather at the end of the day, her energy is felt in the stillness. In the soft glow of a lamp. In the sense of being sheltered. Of being held within a space that is safe and calm. There is no need for words to describe it. It is simply known. Felt in the body. A quiet ease that settles in as the outside world fades into darkness. As night deepens, the sky opens once more. Night stretches above, filled with countless stars. Each one steady. Each one silent. The moon rises again, pale and gentle, casting a soft light across the land. And with it, the presence of Thoth returns. Watching. Recording. Holding the quiet details of the world. There is a sense that nothing is lost. That even the smallest moment is part of something larger. A continuous flow. Unbroken. And in this awareness, the night becomes a space not of emptiness, but of quiet fullness. Within homes, people prepare for rest. Mats are laid down. Bodies settle. Breathing slows. The sounds of the day fade completely. And in this deep quiet, dreams begin to form. Soft. Unclear. Blending memory and feeling. In these dreams, the presence of the gods sometimes appears not as clear figures, but as impressions. A warmth. A movement. A sense of being guided or watched over. And even in sleep, the connection remains. Because for the people of this land, there is no true separation between the physical and the unseen. They exist together. Always. As the night moves forward, there is a moment of deep stillness. A point where everything feels suspended. No wind. No movement. Only silence. It is in this space that another presence is sometimes felt. One that is ancient. Quiet. And deeply connected to the passage of time itself. This is Amun. Amun is not easily defined. He is often described as hidden. Unseen. A presence that exists beyond clear form. Where other gods are connected to specific parts of the world, the sun, the river, the sky, Amun feels more like the space between all things. The breath between moments. The quiet behind sound. He is not always spoken of directly. But he is understood. As something that exists beyond what can be named. And in this understanding, there is a kind of calm. Because it allows for mystery. For the unknown. without fear, without urgency to explain. As the hours pass, the journey of Ra through the underworld continues once more. A quiet passage through darkness. A steady movement forward. There are challenges there, as always. The presence of Apophis, the great serpent, waiting in the unseen. But this struggle is not described with chaos or fear. It is simply part of the cycle. A necessary passage through shadow before light can return. And so, the night holds both stillness and quiet motion. Rest and unseen travel. Silence and soft continuity. Eventually, the darkness begins to thin. Almost imperceptibly. A subtle shift at the edge of the world. The stars begin to fade again. Nut slowly releases the sun once more. And Ra prepares to rise. The same as before. The same as always. This repetition is not dull. It is comforting. Because it means that the world continues. That balance holds. That life moves forward in its steady rhythm. And as the first light touches the land again, the people begin to wake. Not suddenly. Not all at once. But slowly. As if carried gently from sleep into waking. They step outside. They breathe the cool air. They look toward the horizon. And without needing to speak, they understand. The cycle continues. The gods remain. And life, in all its quiet simplicity, begins again. Morning returns once more with a soft and patient glow. The horizon brightens, not in a sudden way, but as if the light is carefully placed across the sky. The air is cool, carrying a gentle freshness that will soon give way to warmth. The Nile reflects this early light, its surface calm, almost glass-like. Along its edges, the first sounds of the day begin again. Footsteps. Water being lifted in clay jars. The faint rustle of movement as people step into another day that feels both new and familiar. Nothing feels rushed. Nothing feels uncertain. There is a quiet trust in the rhythm. A knowing that what has come before will come again. And within this steady beginning, another presence can be felt. One that moves with a sense of quiet authority. A presence tied not only to the gods, but also to the human world. This is Horus. Horus is often seen as the god of the sky, but not in the vast, endless way of Nut. His presence feels more focused. More direct. He is often connected to kingship. To leadership. To the idea of guiding others with a steady and balanced hand. The people see Horus in the falcon. A bird that flies high above the land, its eyes sharp, its movements precise. It does not waste energy. It does not move without purpose. It observes. It waits. And when it acts, it does so with clarity. In the same way, Horus represents a kind of watchfulness. A calm awareness of the world below. The rulers of Egypt are often seen as connected to him. Not in a loud or boastful way. But as a quiet responsibility. To maintain balance. To protect the land. To ensure that Ma'at remains undisturbed. This idea of leadership is not built on force. It is built on steadiness. On listening. On understanding the natural rhythm of the world and moving in harmony with it. And so, Horus becomes a symbol of that balance between strength and calm. Between action and stillness. As the sun rises higher, the land warms once more. The fields begin to glow in soft shades of green and gold. Farmers move through them with familiar motions. Their hands touch the plants gently. Their feet press into the soil with quiet confidence. The work is not separate from the world around them. It is part of it. each action connected to the cycles of water, light, and time. Nearby, small animals move through the grass. Birds glide above. The air carries the faint scent of earth and growing things. And within all of this, the presence of the gods is not distant. It is woven into every detail. In the way the crops grow. In the way the river flows. In the way the people move through their day. As the morning continues, the villages become more active. But even this activity is gentle. There is no sharp noise. No sudden movement. Only a steady increase in motion. Like a slow unfolding. In one part of the village, a craftsman sits quietly. Before him lies a piece of stone. Rough. Unshaped. He does not begin immediately. He studies it. He runs his hand across its surface. He considers its form. And then, slowly, he begins to work. Each movement is careful. Measured. Guided by patience rather than urgency. In this quiet process, the presence of Ra returns once more. The sense that creation is not about force, but about understanding. About allowing form to emerge over time. Nearby, a woman prepares food. Grinding grain with a steady rhythm. Mixing water. Shaping dough. Her movements are smooth, practiced. There is no hesitation. No wasted motion. This, too, is part of the same quiet order. The same steady balance. Ma'at present in the smallest of actions. As the day moves toward midday, the sun stands higher in the sky. Ra continues his path. Unchanging. Reliable. The warmth spreads across the land. The shadows shorten. And the pace of life softens once more. People pause. They rest in shaded areas. They drink water slowly. They allow the heat to pass over them without resistance. There is no struggle against the day. Only acceptance of its rhythm. In the distance, the desert shimmers under the sun. A wide and silent space. Its presence constant. Its stillness deep. Set remains there, as always. A reminder that not all parts of the world are gentle. But even this harshness is part of the balance. Part of the whole. As afternoon begins, the light shifts again. Becoming softer. Less intense. The air moves slightly. Bringing a sense of relief. Children walk along narrow paths, their steps light, their attention drawn to small details. A bird resting on a branch. The movement of water along the edge of the river. The patterns left in the soil. They learn not through instruction alone, but through quiet observation. Through being present. Through living within the rhythm of their world. And in this way, the stories of the gods continue. Not only spoken, but lived. Felt. Carried forward without effort. As the sun begins its slow descent once more, the land prepares again for evening. The same gentle transition. The same soft fading of light. The same return to stillness. Nothing is forced. Nothing is sudden. Everything follows the same quiet path it has always followed. And within that path, the presence of the gods remains constant. Steady. Unseen. But always there. Like the slow movement of the river. Like the quiet turning of the sky. Like the endless rhythm of time itself. The afternoon slowly gives way to evening once again. The light begins to soften, losing its sharpness as it stretches across the land. The warmth of the sun lingers, but it is no longer strong. It rests gently on the, as if it, too, is preparing to slow down. The Nile reflects this change. Its surface glows in deeper tones now, carrying shades of amber and fading gold. The movement of the water remains steady, unchanged, as it always is. Along the riverbanks, the pace of life eases. Work begins to come to a natural close. Tools are set aside. Hands are washed in cool water. People take their time. There is no rush to finish. Only a quiet understanding that the day is ending, and rest is near. In these moments, another presence is often felt. A presence connected to the horizon. To the meeting place between light and darkness. This is Khepri. Khepri is a form of the sun, but not the sun at its height, and not the sun as it sets. He represents the rising sun. The beginning. The quiet emergence of light from darkness. He is often symbolized by the scarab beetle, a small creature that rolls a sphere of earth along the ground. To the people, this simple act carries meaning. A reflection of the way the sun moves across the sky. A reminder that even the smallest actions can mirror the greatest cycles. Khepri is not loud. He does not demand attention. He represents the quiet start of things. The gentle return of light after night. And so, as the sun moves closer to the horizon, there is already a sense of what will come next. A knowing that even as the day ends, another beginning waits. This brings a calm kind of comfort. Because nothing truly disappears. It only changes. It moves into another form. As evening settles further, the sky deepens in color. Soft oranges fade into muted purples. Purples into deep blue. The first stars appear once more, quiet and steady. Nut stretches above again, her presence returning as the light fades. The world becomes still. More still with each passing moment. In the distance, the desert cools. The heat of the day releases slowly from the leaving behind a quiet, open space. The wind may rise gently, moving across the land with a soft and steady motion. Set is present here, as always. Not loud. Not overwhelming. But felt in the shifting air. In the vastness of the empty land. And even this presence, though different from the calm of the river, fits within the balance of the world. Nothing stands alone. Everything belongs. As darkness deepens, small lights appear again in the villages. Lamps glow softly within homes. Their light flickers gently against walls. Shadows move slowly, never sharply. Families gather once more. The day behind them. The night ahead. Food is shared in quiet. Simple meals. Prepared with care. Eaten without hurry. There is comfort in this repetition. In the way each day ends as the last one did. Familiar. Steady. Reliable. And in these moments, Bastet's presence returns. Felt in the safety of the home. In the calm of enclosed space. In the quiet protection that surrounds those within. A child rests against a parent. Eyes half closed. Breathing slow. Listening to the soft rhythm of voices. The outside world fades completely. Only warmth remains. Only stillness. As the night grows deeper, the sky fills with more stars. Each one distant. Each one steady. The moon rises again, casting its soft light across the land. Thoth is present once more. Observing. Recording. Holding the quiet details of the world. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. Everything becomes part of the continuous flow. And in this awareness, there is a deep sense of peace. A feeling that even the smallest moment matters. That each breath, each step, each quiet action is part of something larger. As the night reaches its deepest point, the world becomes almost completely silent. The river moves, but its sound is barely there. The wind rests. The land is still. This is a moment of complete calm. A pause in the cycle. A space where nothing is required. Nothing is expected. Only being. Only rest. And within this deep stillness, the unseen journey continues once more. Ra moves through the darkness. Steady. Unseen. Carrying the promise of light with him. There are no sudden changes. No sharp turns. Only a quiet progression forward. Until, slowly, almost imperceptibly, the darkness begins to shift again. The first hint of light appears at the edge of the world. Soft. Faint. But certain. Khepri prepares to rise once more. And with him, the cycle continues. As it always has. As it always will. Without hurry. Without end. Only a steady, endless rhythm. Carrying everything forward in quiet balance. The edge of the world brightens once more. At first, it is only a faint line of pale light, barely noticeable against the deep blue of the night. But slowly, very gently, it begins to spread. The stars soften. One by one, they fade back into the vastness above. Nut remains, but her presence becomes quieter as the light returns. And from this quiet transition, the sun begins to rise again. Khepri lifts it slowly into the sky. Not with force. Not with sound. But with steady certainty. The land begins to wake. A soft stirring moves through the Nile catches the first light, turning from dark stillness into a calm shimmer. Along its banks, the first footsteps of the day begin again. A door opens. A figure steps outside. A clay jar is carried toward the water. These small movements feel familiar. Repeated. Comforting. Nothing feels new, yet everything feels gently renewed. And within this early light, there is a quiet clarity. A sense that the world is balanced. That everything is in its place. Ma'at flows through this moment. Unseen, but present. In the stillness. In the rhythm. In the quiet return of light after darkness. As the sun rises higher, Ra takes his place in the sky once more. His warmth spreads across the land. Soft at first. Then steady. The fields begin to glow. Green and gold. Alive but calm. Farmers walk slowly along the narrow paths, their steps measured, their movements practiced. They do not rush into the day. They enter it gently. As if stepping into a familiar current. Their hands touch the soil. Their eyes move across the crops. They notice small changes. The growth of a plant. The shift in the water's path. The subtle movement of the air. And in all of this, the presence of the gods is not separate. It is part of the same experience. Part of the same quiet awareness. Nearby, the river continues its endless flow. Boats move slowly across its surface. Long and narrow. Guided without urgency. The sound of water touching wood is soft and rhythmic. Almost like breathing. The people who travel on these boats sit quietly. Watching the banks pass by. Feeling the movement beneath them. Trusting the path of the river. This, too, reflects something deeper. A way of living that does not resist the flow, but moves with it. Allowing time to unfold naturally. Without force. Without strain. As the morning deepens, the villages become more active. But even in this activity, there is calm. A steady rhythm. a quiet coordination. People move past one another with understanding. There is no need for loud instruction. No need for sharp direction. Everything follows patterns that are already known. In one part of the village, a group gathers near a shaded space. They sit close together, speaking softly. Their voices low and even. There is no urgency in their conversation. Only a gentle exchange of thoughts. In these moments, Hathor's presence can be felt again. In the ease of connection. In the comfort of shared space. In the quiet joy of simply being together. No grand celebration. No loud music. Only a calm sense of belonging. As the sun continues its slow path, the light grows stronger. The air warms. Shadows shorten. And the pace of life adjusts once more. People begin to slow their movements. They rest more often. They sit in the shade. They drink water slowly, allowing the heat to pass without resistance. The land itself seems to pause, as if taking a long, steady breath. Even the animals grow still, finding shelter from the sun. The river, however, does not change. It continues its movement. Always steady. Always present. A quiet constant in a world of gentle shifts. And within this constancy, there is deep comfort. Because it reminds the people that some things do not change. Some things remain steady no matter what. As the afternoon begins, the light softens again. The intensity fades. The air moves slightly, bringing a sense of relief. Children walk along the edges of the fields, their attention drawn to small details. A ripple in the water. A bird resting in silence. The patterns in the soil beneath their feet. They do not need to be told what these things mean. They learn by seeing. By being present. The night air by living within the rhythm of their world. And in this quiet learning, the stories of the gods continue. Not as distant myths, but as part of daily life. As part of the way the world is understood. As the sun begins its descent once more, the sky shifts in color. Soft gold returns. Then amber. Then deeper tones of orange. The Nile reflects these changes. A moving mirror of the sky. And as the light fades, the world begins to slow again. The same gentle transition. The same quiet return to stillness. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. Everything moves as it always has. In a steady, endless cycle. And within that cycle, the presence of the gods remains. Quiet. Constant. Unseen, but always felt. Like the rhythm of breath. Like the slow movement of time. Like the soft, endless flow of the Nile itself. The evening returns with its familiar quiet. Light lingers low across the, stretching long and thin before fading into shadow. The warmth of the day softens, releasing its hold on the, allowing a cooler calm to settle gently over the land. The Nile darkens again. Its surface becomes smooth, reflective, like a long ribbon of stillness flowing through the heart of everything. Along its banks, the final movements of the day take place. Tools are gathered. Hands are rinsed in the river. Feet press softly into the as people make their way back toward their homes. There is no urgency. Only a quiet understanding that the day has come to rest. And within this transition, another presence quietly emerges. A presence that watches over thresholds. Over beginnings and endings. Over the quiet moments of passage. This is Anubis. Anubis is often connected to the journey beyond life. But his presence is not one of fear. It is one of guidance. of careful, steady movement from one state to another. He is seen as a guardian, a watcher at the edge of what is known. And in the soft light of evening, as the world shifts from day into night, his presence feels close. Because this, too, is a kind of passage. A movement from light into darkness. From activity into rest. From waking into sleep. The people understand this in a quiet way. They do not speak of it loudly. They do not fill it with worry. They accept that all things move through stages. That nothing remains fixed. And that every ending holds within it the beginning of something else. As darkness deepens, Nut stretches across the sky once more. Her form filled with stars. Endless. Silent. Watching over the land below. The moon rises gently, casting its pale light across the river and the beyond. Thoth is present again. Observing. Recording. Holding the quiet flow of time. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. Everything becomes part of the endless story. Within the villages, soft lights begin to glow. Oil lamps flicker against the walls of homes. Their light is warm, steady, never harsh. Families gather. Their voices low. Their movements slow. The world outside fades into darkness, but inside there is calm. There is safety. There is stillness. Bastet's presence rests here. In the quiet protection of the home. In the soft boundaries that separate the outside from the inside. A child rests quietly, eyes growing heavy. The rhythm of breath becomes slow and even. The sounds of the day are gone. Replaced by silence. Gentle. Unbroken. As the night deepens further, the land becomes still. Almost completely still. The river moves, but its sound is soft. Barely there. The wind rests. The desert stretches out in quiet darkness. Set remains, as always, in the unseen distance. A presence of contrast. Of change. But even he is quiet now. Part of the balance. Part of the whole. And within this deep stillness, the unseen journey begins again. Ra moves through the underworld. Steady. Unseen. Carrying light through darkness. There are no sudden sounds. No sharp movements. Only a quiet progression. A path that has been followed countless times before. And will be followed again. As always. As the night reaches its deepest point, there is a moment where everything feels suspended. A pause. A breath held between one moment and the next. This is where the presence of a moon can be felt again. Not seen. Not defined. But understood as the quiet space that holds everything together. The unseen thread that connects all things. The stillness behind movement. The silence behind sound. And in this space, there is peace. A deep, steady calm that does not change. That does not move. That simply is. Eventually, the darkness begins to shift. Almost imperceptibly. The edge of the world grows lighter. The stars begin to fade. Nut gently releases the sun once more. And Khepri prepares to rise. The cycle continues. As it always has. Without effort. Without interruption. Only a quiet, endless rhythm. And as the first light touches the land again, the people begin to wake. Slowly. Gently. Carried from sleep into waking without resistance. They step outside. They breathe the cool air. They look toward the horizon. And they understand, without needing to speak. Everything continues. Everything remains in balance. and the quiet presence of the gods is still there. In the light. In the river. In the beneath their feet. In the steady, unbroken flow of time. The morning arrives again, as it always does, without announcement. It does not arrive with force or sound. It simply becomes present, slowly filling the edges of the world with light. The darkness does not vanish quickly. It dissolves gently, like something returning to its place after a long pause. The Nile reflects this change in its own quiet way. What was once deep and shadowed becomes soft and silver again. The water carries the memory of night, but also the promise of day. Along the riverbanks, life begins once more. Not suddenly. Not loudly. But in the same steady rhythm that has always existed. A hand reaches for water. A door opens. A step is taken into the cool morning air. And the cycle continues, as it always has. Within this repetition, there is no sense of beginning or end. Only continuation. Only flow. And in this flow, the presence of the gods remains woven into every part of existence. Not separate. Not distant. But present in the quiet structure of the world itself. Ra rises again into the sky. His light spreading evenly across land and water. There is no hesitation in his movement. No change in his path. Only steady motion. And beneath that light, the world responds in silence. The fields warm slowly. The sand brightens. The river glows faintly. Life resumes its familiar rhythm. In this gentle return, another presence becomes noticeable. One that feels less like a figure and more like an energy carried within the land itself. This is happy. Happy is the spirit of the Nile. Not its source. Not its end. But its living flow. The river is not seen as just water. It is seen as life moving through the earth. Happy represents that life. The rising of the flood waters. The quiet spreading of fertile soil. The renewal that arrives each year without failure. When the Nile swells and reaches the fields, it does not bring destruction. It brings softness. It spreads across the land like a slow breath, leaving behind richness when it retreats. The people do not rush this moment. They wait for it. They depend on it. And when it comes, they receive it with quiet gratitude. Happy is not worshipped with loud ceremony. He is acknowledged in the simple act of planting. In the patient act of waiting. In the understanding that life itself is tied to this steady flow. As the day continues, the heat grows once more. The sun stands high above the land. Still. Constant. The people adjust without complaint. They move into shade when needed. They rest when the air becomes too warm. They continue when it softens again. Everything follows the rhythm of the sky. And above it all, Ra continues his journey. Not watching with emotion, but maintaining order through presence alone. In the distance, the desert remains unchanged. Endless. Still. Its silence stretching beyond sight. Set exists within that space. Not as chaos alone, but as contrast. As reminder. That balance requires difference. That stillness and change exist together. As afternoon approaches, the light begins to soften again. The harsh edges of the day slowly fade. Shadows lengthen. The world becomes less sharp. More gentle. In this softened light, the villages appear calmer. People speak less. Move slower. The rhythm of the day begins to release its tension. Children sit near the edges of homes. Watching dust drift through sunlight. Listening to the distant sound of water. learning without effort, understanding without explanation. And as they observe, they absorb the quiet truth of their world. That everything moves in cycles. That everything returns. That nothing is truly lost. As evening begins its approach, a familiar transformation unfolds across the sky. Gold deepens into amber. Amber fades into orange. Orange dissolves into purple. And slowly, the first stars return once more. Nut appears again above, vast and endless, carrying the night within her. The world begins to slow. Not suddenly, but gradually. Like breath easing into rest. Within homes, lamps are lit again. Their glow soft and steady. The shadows they cast are gentle, never sharp. Families gather in quiet spaces. The sounds of the day fade into memory. Voices become softer. Movements slower. There is no need for anything more than presence. And in this quiet, Bastet is felt again. In the safety of enclosed space. In the calm that rests within walls. In the simple feeling of being protected from the vastness outside. Night does not bring fear. It brings rest. It brings enclosure. It brings stillness. Above, the moon rises again, pale and watchful. Thoth moves with it, unseen, observing the passage of time. Holding every moment in silent record. As the world sleeps, Ra continues his unseen journey beneath the horizon. Through darkness that is not empty, but filled with quiet passage. He does not stop. He does not hurry. He continues. As he always does. And so the night deepens. The silence grows. The world becomes still again. Until, at the far edge of darkness, the first hint of light returns. Not sudden. Not loud. Just a soft return of brightness. Khepri begins again. And with him, the cycle turns once more. Without beginning. Without end. Only continuity. Only rhythm. Only the quiet, endless unfolding of time itself. The first light of dawn returns again, quiet and unassuming. It does not rush into the world. It spreads slowly, like a soft hand lifting a dark veil from the sky. The stars begin to fade one by one, not disappearing suddenly, but gently stepping away into the growing brightness. Nut remains above, vast and patient, holding the memory of night as it dissolves into day. And once again, the sun begins its rise. Khepri moves it upward in that unseen, steady way, like something that has always been happening and will always continue. The river responds first. It catches the light before the land does, reflecting a faint shimmer that moves softly across its surface. The Nile never resists the sky above it. It simply mirrors whatever is given to it, moment by moment. Along its banks, life begins its familiar return. A hand stirs water in a clay bowl. A door opens with a quiet creak. Bare feet touch cool earth. And the world resumes its gentle motion. There is something deeply consistent in this rhythm. Not exciting. Not dramatic. But steady in a way that feels almost protective. As if the world itself is breathing slowly, and everyone within it is breathing with it. Ra rises higher, and the land becomes warmer. His light is not harsh at this hour. It is soft, still fresh from its return. It touches everything evenly: fields, homes, water, and sand. Nothing is left untouched. Nothing is rushed. And beneath this light, life unfolds in quiet patterns that have existed for as long as memory can reach. Farmers move into the fields again. Their steps are slow, familiar. Their hands meet the soil with practiced care. They do not think of it as labor in the modern sense. It is simply participation in the cycle. A way of living alongside the land rather than against it. And in this quiet participation, another presence can be felt. Not as a figure. Not as a voice. But as an understanding shared by all things growing. This is the presence of fertility itself. The unseen agreement between water, soil, and sun. Between river and seed. Between patience and time. The gods, in this world, are not distant rulers of these processes. They are the processes. They are the way the world behaves when it is in balance. As the morning deepens, small changes begin to appear across the landscape. A plant slightly taller than it was yesterday. A path in the sand subtly shifted by wind. A bird returning to the same branch as if it never left. Everything is small. Everything is subtle. But everything matters. In the distance, the Nile continues its slow movement. It does not hurry toward anything. It does not resist anything. It simply flows. And in its flow, it carries the memory of everything it has passed. Upstream villages. Fertile banks. Wide, quiet bends in the land. And beyond that, the desert edges where life becomes sparse and silence grows deeper. Even there, balance exists. Even there, Set's presence is part of the world's structure. Not as destruction alone, but as contrast. As the space that defines what growth means. Without dryness, water would have no meaning. Without stillness, movement would have no shape. As the sun reaches its higher point again, the heat begins to settle into the land. Not sharply, but steadily. The world becomes warmer. More still in its own way. Movement slows slightly. Work pauses more often. People rest in shaded areas where the light does not reach directly. And in these pauses, time feels less like a line and more like a circle. A repeating rhythm. A return. A continuation. Even silence feels different here. It is not empty. It is full. Full of presence. Full of history. Full of everything that has ever happened and will continue to happen. As afternoon approaches, the sky begins its slow shift once again. Light softens. Edges blur. The harshness of midday fades into something more forgiving. And life adjusts with it, as it always does. Nothing resists. Nothing breaks. Everything adapts gently. Children walk along the river's edge, their attention drawn to small, quiet details. The ripple of water. The shadow of a bird. The movement of reeds in a slow wind. They do not yet name these things as divine. But they feel their importance. Their place in the world. And so, without instruction, they learn the language of balance. As the sun begins to descend once more, the horizon changes again. Gold becomes amber. Amber becomes deep orange. The river mirrors it all, as if holding the memory of the sky within itself. The world prepares for evening without effort. Without instruction. As it always has. And as it always will. Because in this land, nothing truly ends. It only shifts. It only changes form. And within that change, the presence of the gods remains constant. Not as distant figures watching from above, but as the quiet structure of existence itself. Present in light. Present in water. Present in stillness. Present in time. The sun lowers slowly toward the edge of the world again. It does not fall quickly. It does not rush. It moves as if it understands that endings are never sudden here, only gradual, like a breath easing out after a long day. The sky begins to shift in color. Warm gold softens into deeper amber, and then into quiet shades of orange that seem to stretch across the horizon like a fading memory. The Nile mirrors it all once again. It always does. The river never resists the sky. It simply reflects whatever is above it, carrying light during the day and shadow during the night, as if it remembers both equally. Along its banks, the day begins to loosen its hold. Not stopping. Not ending abruptly. Just releasing slowly. A tool is set down. A container is lifted and carried home. Footsteps return along familiar paths. And the land begins its gentle transition into evening. In this softening light, the presence of the world feels different. Less active. More inward. More quiet. This is the time when reflection seems natural, even without thought. A time when everything feels slightly closer together. As if distance itself becomes softer. Ra continues his journey across the sky, but now his presence feels warmer, more diffuse. The sharpness of midday is gone. What remains is a steady glow, stretching across fields, water, and stone. And beneath this light, life begins to slow in response. The rhythm of the day does not break. It simply changes tempo. In the fields, movement becomes less frequent. Hands rest more often. Conversation becomes quieter. Even the wind seems to soften as it passes through reeds and trees. There is a natural acceptance in this slowing. No resistance. No urgency. Just a shared understanding that the day is moving toward rest. In the distance, the desert begins to cool. Its sands, which once shimmered under the heat, now settle into muted tones. The vastness remains unchanged. But its temperature shifts, its presence becoming more still. Set exists within that space, as he always does. Not as a force of interruption alone, but as a reminder of contrast. That life along the river is made meaningful by the silence of the desert beside it. That growth is understood because stillness exists. That movement is known because there is emptiness. As evening deepens further, Nud returns fully across the sky. Her vast form filled with stars, stretching endlessly above the world below. She does not move. She holds. She surrounds. And within her presence, the night begins to unfold. The first stars appear one by one, not suddenly, but gently, like small lights being placed into a vast, dark space. The moon follows, rising slowly, casting a pale and steady glow over everything it touches. The river reflects this light in softer tones now. Silver replaces gold. Deep blue replaces orange. The world becomes quieter with each passing moment. Within homes, small lamps are lit. Their light is warm and contained. It does not reach far, but it is enough. Enough to gather people close. Enough to soften the edges of the night. Families sit together in stillness. Food is shared without rush. Words are few. Presence is enough. In these moments, there is a sense of safety that does not need to be explained. A quiet assurance that the world outside may be vast and unknown, but within this space, everything is held gently. Bastet is felt here again. Not as something seen, but as something known. In the calm of enclosed walls. In the softness of shared space. In the quiet rhythm of breathing that slows as night deepens. Outside, Thoth moves with the moonlight. Watching. Observing. Holding the passage of time as it unfolds without interruption. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. Everything is recorded in silence. And as the night grows deeper, the world becomes still once more. The river continues its movement, but even its sound feels distant now. The wind rests completely. The land is quiet. Not empty, but full in a different way. Full of stillness. Full of pause. Full of the space between moments. In this deep quiet, Ra continues his unseen journey beneath the horizon. Moving through the darkness not as absence, but as passage. A steady crossing through what cannot be seen. There is no struggle. Only continuation. Only movement forward through silence. And somewhere within that darkness, there is always the promise of return. Because here, nothing ends permanently. Everything cycles. Everything returns. And so, as the night reaches its deepest point, the world holds its breath again. A moment of complete stillness. A pause between cycles. Between light and light. Between day and day. And then, far away at the edge of the unseen horizon, the faintest shift begins. Almost nothing. Almost imperceptible. But certain. The darkness softens. The stars begin to fade. And Khepri prepares once more to lift the sun. Not as a beginning. Not as an ending. But as continuation. As always. As it has always been. The first sign of morning is almost invisible at first. It is not light in the way the eye immediately recognizes it. It is a soft thinning of darkness at the very edge of the horizon, as if the night itself is becoming lighter in thought before it changes in form. The stars remain still for a moment longer, holding their places in the sky. Night stretches above everything, unchanged, patient, eternal. And then, slowly, one by one, the stars begin to fade. Not disappearing all at once, but stepping backward into distance. Returning to something beyond sight. The sky begins to open again. Not with sudden brightness, but with a quiet unfolding. And from that unfolding, the new day begins. Khepri is present again. Not seen, but understood. A steady rising force that carries the sun upward as if it has always been doing so, and will always continue. The light that follows is soft at first. It does not fill everything immediately. It grows slowly, like warmth returning to a body that has rested through the night. The Nile reflects this change once more. Its surface shifts from deep shadow into a faint silver glow. Then into soft, moving light that drifts gently across the water. It never holds one shape for long. It is always changing. Always continuing. Along the riverbanks, the world begins to stir again. A familiar sequence. A familiar rhythm. A hand reaches for water. A body rises from rest. A door opens into morning air that feels cooler than it will soon become. There is no need for instruction. No need for urgency. Everything simply resumes its place in the cycle. Ra rises higher, and the land responds in quiet harmony. Fields begin to glow under his light. Not brightly at first, but steadily. As if the earth itself is remembering how to receive the sun. The air grows warmer, but still gentle. Still fresh from night. And within this balance, life begins to move again. Slowly. Naturally. Without resistance. In the distance, the river continues its steady path. It curves through the land with patient consistency. Never rushing. Never stopping. Carrying with it the memory of everything it has passed. Upstream waters. Downstream villages. Quiet banks where time feels almost still. And in its movement, there is something deeply reassuring. a reminder that change does not mean disruption. It means continuation. It means flow. As the morning deepens, the presence of happy can be felt again. Not in a voice. Not in a form. But in the quiet fertility of the land itself. In the soil that remains rich after the river retreats. In the crops that grow with steady patience. In the simple certainty that life will continue as long as the river continues. People move through their tasks with calm familiarity. Not because they are repeating something meaningless. But because repetition itself is part of the structure of life here. Each action is connected to something larger. Something unseen but deeply understood. Even silence feels structured in this world. Not empty. But full of rhythm. Full of quiet meaning. As the sun climbs higher, the warmth of the day begins to settle once more. Shadows shorten. Colors brighten. And the land becomes more awake. Yet even in this brightness, there is no chaos. Only order. Only gentle motion. Only the steady unfolding of time. A craftsman shapes stone with patient hands. Each movement slow and deliberate. Each detail considered before it is formed. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. The stone becomes something new gradually, as if it is revealing itself rather than being changed. In this process, the presence of Ta is felt again. In thought before form. In intention before action. In the quiet space where creation begins long before anything is visible. Nearby, voices remain soft. Conversations move like the wind through reeds. Unhurried. Light. Passing easily from one moment to the next. There is no need to hold on to words longer than necessary. They come. They pass. Like everything else. As midday approaches, Ra reaches the highest point of his journey once more. The light is strongest here. But even now, it does not feel harsh. It feels steady. Predictable. Comforting in its constancy. The world rests beneath it. Not resisting. Not struggling. Simply existing within it. And as always, Set remains in the distant desert. Unchanging. A reminder of contrast. Of space. Of the vast silence beyond the river's life. The desert does not intrude. It simply exists beside everything else. A reminder that the world is wide. Wider than comfort. Wider than certainty. But still part of the same balance. As afternoon slowly begins to arrive, the light begins its gentle shift once more. The intensity softens. The edges of the world become less sharp. And life begins to ease again into a slower rhythm. Not stopping. Not ending. Just softening. Always softening. And somewhere beyond what can be seen, the cycle prepares itself again for evening. As it always does. As it always has. Without beginning. Without end. Only continuation. Only flow. Only the quiet certainty that the world will move forward into its next moment, just as it has moved through all the moments before it. The afternoon light begins to soften again. It does not change quickly. It loosens its grip on the land slowly, like something exhaling after a long period of stillness. The brightness that once filled every corner begins to ease, leaving behind a warmer, quieter glow. Shadows stretch a little longer now. The edges of the world feel less sharp. More gentle. More forgiving. The Nile continues its steady movement through all of it. It does not react to the changing sky. It simply carries on, reflecting each stage of light as if it has known every version of the day before. Gold. Silver. Deepening blue. It holds them all without preference. Along its banks, the rhythm of life adjusts once more. Work slows. Not because it is finished, but because the day itself is shifting. A hand pauses on a tool. A body rests beneath shade. A quiet breath is taken before the next movement begins. And in this slowing, there is no sense of loss. Only balance returning to its softer state. Ra continues his path across the sky, but now his presence feels more distant, more angled toward the horizon. The strength of midday has passed. What remains is a steady warmth that stretches across the land without pressure. Fields begin to lose their bright intensity. They settle into deeper greens and muted golds. The wind moves lightly through them, bending grass and reed in slow, unhurried waves. Everything feels slightly closer to rest. Not asleep. Not finished. But gently turning inward. In the distance, the desert remains unchanged. Still vast. Still silent. Its presence never shifts with the time of day. It simply is. A constant contrast to the river's life. Set exists within that space, as part of that stillness. Not as disturbance alone, but as the necessary edge of the world's balance. Without him, the world would have no boundary. No definition of growth against emptiness. No understanding of movement against stillness. As the afternoon deepens, a familiar softness spreads across everything. Light becomes warmer again, but less intense. The air feels heavier, yet calmer. Sounds grow quieter without being silenced. Even movement itself seems to slow naturally, as if the world is conserving energy for what comes next. In the villages, people begin to prepare quietly for the end of the day. Not in a hurried way, but in a gradual return. Objects are gathered. Spaces are cleared. Water is drawn one final time from the river before evening fully arrives. Everything is done with a sense of completion that does not feel final. Only transitional. As if nothing is ever truly finished here. Only moved forward. Children sit near doorways, watching the changing sky. They do not speak much. Their attention rests on small details. The way light moves across stone. The way dust drifts in the air. The way the river changes color with each passing moment. They are learning without knowing they are learning. Absorbing the rhythm of the world simply by being within it. As evening approaches again, the transformation in the sky begins once more. It is always the same, yet never exactly identical. Gold deepens into amber. Amber becomes soft orange. Orange begins to fade into violet and deepening blue. Nud returns above in full presence, holding the vastness of night within her form. And as she stretches across the sky, the first stars begin to appear again. Not all at once, but one by one. Quietly. Carefully. As if they are remembering their place. The Nile reflects this change with quiet grace. Its surface becomes darker, more still. Yet still alive. Still moving. Carrying the memory of the day into night. Along the riverbanks, lamps begin to appear again. Soft points of light within the growing darkness. Their glow is warm and contained. Not meant to push back the night. Only to exist within it. Inside homes, families gather once more. The world outside recedes into shadow. But inside, there is warmth. There is presence. There is quiet togetherness. Voices are soft. Movements are slow. The day is no longer something to be completed. It is something to be released. And in this release, Bastet is felt again. In the safety of walls. In the calm of enclosed space. In the sense that nothing outside needs to be faced right now. Only rest. Only stillness. Above, the moon rises once more, pale and steady. Thoth moves with it, observing everything without interruption. Holding time in silent awareness. Nothing is overlooked. Nothing is lost. Everything is part of the unfolding record of existence. As the night deepens, the land becomes quieter. The river continues its flow, but its sound feels distant now. The wind rests. The fields stand still. Even the desert seems to hold its breath. And within this deep stillness, the unseen journey begins again beneath the horizon. Ra moves through the darkness once more. Not rushing. Not resisting. Only continuing. As he always has. And will always do. Because here, in this world, nothing truly ends. It only changes form. It only shifts. It only moves into another part of the same endless cycle. And as the night reaches its deepest point, the world becomes almost completely still once more. A pause. A silence. A resting between breaths. And in that silence, the faintest shift begins again at the edge of darkness. The return of light has already started. Quiet. Unseen. Certain. Khepri stirs once more. And the cycle continues. The darkness does not end all at once. It begins to loosen, slowly, like something that has held still for a long time and is now ready to change again. At the edge of the sky, there is a faint softening. Not light yet. Only the idea of light. A subtle shift that cannot be pointed to, but can be felt. The stars remain for a moment longer, steady and patient, as if they too are waiting for the next breath of the world. Nut still stretches across everything above, holding the night gently in place. But even she seems to change, almost imperceptibly, as if the vastness she carries is preparing to release something once more. And then, slowly, the transformation begins. Khepri rises again in the unseen space beyond the horizon. There is no sound. No sudden movement. Only continuation. The sun begins its return. Not as an event. But as a process that has never truly stopped. The first light is faint. Barely noticeable. A soft line forming where darkness meets something lighter than darkness. The river responds first, as it always does. It catches this change before the land fully understands it. A thin reflection of silver and pale gold moves across its surface. Like memory returning. Like breath returning. Along the banks, the world begins again. Not abruptly. Not in interruption. But in gentle re-entry. A hand moves. A body shifts. A quiet awareness returns to the waking world. And there is no surprise in it. Only familiarity. Only the deep understanding that this is how things are meant to be. Ra follows his path upward once more. His presence is not forceful at this hour. It is soft. Almost tender. Spreading across the land like something remembered rather than something newly given. Fields begin to reappear from shadow. Not changing, but revealing themselves again. As if the night had simply folded them away for a time. And now they return. The air is cool again, carrying the freshness of the night that has just passed. It moves gently across the skin. Across the water. Across the open spaces between homes and fields. In this quiet morning return, there is a sense of continuity that does not need explanation. It is simply known. Life resumes its rhythm. As it always does. In the distance, the desert remains unchanged. Still vast. Still silent. Still watching the edge where river life meets emptiness. Set is there, as he always is. Not interrupting. Not moving closer. Only existing as contrast. A reminder that the world is not only growth and water and light, but also stillness, and space, and absence. As the sun rises higher, the land warms gradually once more. The softness of dawn begins to fade into the steadier light of morning. And with it, movement increases again. Not sharply, but in layers. One by one. People step outside. Work resumes. Tools are lifted again. Water is carried. Bread is prepared. The world returns to its daily shape. But nothing feels new. Everything feels continued. As if it was always in motion, even during rest. In this steady rhythm, Ta is present again. In every act of creation. In every small shaping of material into form. In every careful repetition of skilled hands working without rush. Because creation here is not a single moment. It is ongoing. Unfinished. Always becoming. As the morning deepens, the river continues its eternal flow. It does not change its pace for anyone. It simply moves. Carrying time within it. Carrying reflection within it. Carrying the entire memory of the land along its path. And in that movement, there is comfort. Because it does not stop. Because it does not break. Because it continues even when everything else rests. The sun climbs higher again, and the world settles into the familiar warmth of day. Shadows shorten. Colors sharpen. And life takes on its steady, practiced rhythm once more. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. Everything unfolds exactly as it has before. And as it always will again. In this cycle, there is no final moment. No ending point. Only return. Only repetition that does not feel repetitive. Only continuity that feels like peace. And as the day moves forward into its familiar shape, the presence of the gods remains quietly woven into everything. Not above. Not apart. But within. Within the light. Within the river. Within the slow, steady breath of time itself. The day settles once more into its steady middle rhythm. The sun is now high enough to fill the world with a clear, even light, but not so intense that it feels harsh. It rests above everything like a quiet presence that does not interfere, only observes. The Nile continues its endless movement. It has no change in expression, no change in pace. It flows as it always has, carrying the reflection of sky and land without preference. Some days it looks like polished stone. Other days like soft moving glass. But it is always the same river beneath those changes. Along its banks, life moves in a calm and practiced way. There is no urgency in the way people work here. Everything follows a rhythm that feels older than memory itself. A hand reaches into grain. A container is filled. A path is walked and walked again. These are not separate actions. They are part of a continuous flow of living. And in that flow, the presence of the unseen world remains steady. Not interrupting. Not demanding. Simply existing alongside everything else. Ra continues his journey across the sky. At this point in the day, his light feels balanced. Not rising. Not falling. Just present. A steady warmth that holds the world in place. The fields beneath him stretch wide and quiet. Their green tones softened by light, wind and distance. Nothing in them feels rushed. Even growth itself feels patient here. As if the land understands that everything takes its time. In this quiet stretch of the day, there is a deeper sense of stability. Not something spoken. Not something taught. But something felt through repetition. Through the simple return of familiar patterns. In the background of all this, Ma'at remains present. Not as a figure. Not as a voice. But as a structure. A quiet order that holds everything together without needing attention. The way the river follows its path. The way the sun returns each morning. The way night always follows day, and day always follows night. These are not separate events. They are one continuous movement. As afternoon slowly begins to approach, the light changes in small ways. It becomes slightly warmer in tone. Softer around the edges. Shadows begin to lengthen again, almost unnoticed at first. The world does not shift suddenly. It leans gently into change. In the villages, there is a natural slowing that begins again. Not because the work is finished, but because the rhythm of the day is shifting. People pause more often. They sit in the shade without needing reason. They drink water slowly. They allow the air to move around them without resistance. Even silence feels different now. More noticeable. More present. In this part of the day, Hathor's presence can be felt again. In small moments of ease. In the quiet comfort of rest between tasks. In the gentle relief of stepping out of direct sun into shade. There is no need for celebration. No need for expression. Only a soft sense of being at ease within the world. As the sun begins its gradual descent toward the horizon, the light across the land starts to stretch. Not fading yet, but changing direction. Everything becomes slightly longer. Slightly more open. The river reflects this shift with quiet accuracy. Its surface now carries a deeper gold again, mixed with the first hints of orange. It does not hold still. It does not rush forward. It simply continues. Always continuing. In the distance, the desert remains unchanged. Its stillness feels even more pronounced as the day moves toward evening. It absorbs light differently than the river lands. It does not soften with growth. It holds its emptiness with quiet permanence. Set remains part of that space. Not in conflict with the world beside it, but as its necessary boundary. The place where life meets what does not grow. As evening begins to approach again, the sky starts its familiar transformation. The same pattern. Always the same. Yet never exactly identical. Light deepens. Colors shift. The horizon slowly prepares itself for night. Nut begins to reappear across the sky in her full presence. And the world, once again, prepares to become still. Inside homes, lamps will soon be lit. Voices will soften. Movement will slow. And the cycle will turn once more toward rest. But for now, the world remains in this quiet transition. Neither fully day, nor fully night. Only passage. Only movement between states. And in that movement, everything remains connected. Everything remains whole. Because here, in this ancient rhythm of existence, nothing is ever truly separated. Only transformed. Only carried forward. The light of late afternoon begins to soften even further. It no longer feels like the bright, steady presence of midday. Instead, it becomes more golden, more angled, as if the world is slowly tilting toward rest without ever fully stopping. Shadows stretch longer now across the land. They move gently over the fields, over the riverbanks, over the small paths between homes. Everything feels slightly quieter, even before the sounds actually fade. The Nile continues its steady movement through it all. It does not change its course. It does not change its pace. It simply carries the day forward, just as it carries the night, just as it has carried every moment before this one. On its surface, the sky is reflected again in warmer tones. Gold blending into soft amber. Amber beginning to deepen toward orange. The water holds these colors briefly, then lets them pass, as if nothing is meant to stay in one form for too long. Along the riverbanks, the rhythm of life begins to ease again. Not abruptly. Not with notice. But in quiet recognition that the day is slowly nearing its end. A tool is placed down. A step slows. A long breath is taken before movement continues. There is no interruption in life here. Only adjustment. Only flow. And in this gentle shifting, the presence of Ra feels different once more. He is still above. Still moving. But now his light feels more distant. More stretched. As if it is preparing to leave without truly leaving. The world beneath him begins to soften in response. Colors lose their sharpness. Edges blur slightly. Even sound feels more contained. More inward. In the villages, people begin the slow return from work. Not as an ending, but as a continuation into another part of the day. Water is carried back toward homes. Grain is stored. Spaces are quietly organized. Everything is done without urgency. Without tension. Because nothing here demands haste. Time itself feels like something that can be followed rather than chased. In this late part of the day, Ma'at is still present. Not in action. But in structure. In the quiet agreement between everything that happens and everything that will happen next. The river remains steady. The land remains balanced. The sky follows its pattern without deviation. And the people, knowingly or not, move within that pattern as if it were the most natural thing in the world. As the sun lowers further toward the horizon, the transformation becomes more visible. The sky begins to deepen in color again. Gold softens into richer orange tones. Then slowly into shades of red and violet. The change is never sudden. It unfolds like a long, gentle exhale. Nut begins to emerge more clearly across the sky once more. Her presence feels larger now, more encompassing, as if she is drawing the world gently toward night. Stars begin to appear again. Not many at first. Only a few faint points of light. Then more, gradually filling the sky with quiet consistency. The Nile reflects this transition in a deeper way now. Its surface becomes darker, more reflective, almost mirror-like. It carries the colors of the fading sky like a memory that is slowly being folded away. Along its edges, the final movements of the day take place. Paths are walked back toward homes. Doors are opened. Soft light begins to appear within enclosed spaces. Not bright. Not strong. But enough to hold the coming night. Inside these homes, the feeling of Bastet's presence is quiet but steady. It is not spoken of. It does not need to be. It is felt in the safety of walls. In the comfort of enclosed space. In the calm separation from the vastness outside. Voices are softer now. Movements slower. Everything begins to settle into a quieter state. Above, the moon rises gently again. Its light is pale and steady, spreading softly across the land. Thoth moves with it, silent and observant, carrying the awareness of everything that passes through time. Nothing is forgotten. Nothing is lost. Only held. Only observed. As the night begins to take its full shape once more, the desert becomes even more still in contrast. Its silence deepens. Its emptiness becomes more present. Set remains there, unchanged, as always. A reminder of what lies beyond the river's life. Not as opposition, but as boundary, as definition. And as the night grows deeper, the world begins to slow almost completely. The river continues, but its movement feels quieter now. The wind rests. The fields stand still. Even the sky feels vast and unmoving, filled with stars that do not shift in any visible way. This is the world at its most quiet point. Not empty, but fully still. And within this stillness, Ra continues his unseen journey beneath the horizon. Moving through darkness that is not absence, but passage. A steady continuation through what cannot be seen. There is no fear in this movement. No interruption. Only flow. Only continuation. And somewhere far beyond the edge of sight, the first faint suggestion of change begins again. Not yet light. Not yet morning. Only the earliest shift toward return. The cycle has not ended. It has only turned again. As it always does. As it always will. The night rests fully now over the land. Not in silence that feels empty, but in silence that feels complete. A silence that holds everything in place rather than removing it. The Nile continues its quiet movement through the darkness. It is harder to see now, but it is never gone. Even when the surface becomes almost indistinguishable from the surrounding night, the river is still there flowing, carrying, continuing. Above it, Nut stretches endlessly. Her body filled with stars, uncountable and steady. They do not flicker in urgency. They simply remain, as if they have always known their place. And beneath them, the world settles into its deepest calm. Inside homes, light is minimal now. Small flames flicker gently in oil lamps, casting soft, trembling patterns on walls. There is no brightness that reaches far. Only enough to hold the space together. Enough to make the darkness feel close, but not overwhelming. People rest in stillness. Their bodies slow. Their breathing deepens. The sounds of the day have fully dissolved. What remains is only presence. Only quiet existence within shelter. Bastet's presence feels closest here. Not in form. Not in movement. But in the simple sense of safety. The feeling that within these walls, nothing needs to be guarded in urgency. Nothing needs to be chased. Nothing needs to be feared. Only rested within. Outside, Thoth continues his silent observation beneath the moon. The pale light spreads across the river in thin, gentle lines. It does not reveal everything. Only enough. Enough to suggest shape. Enough to guide awareness. Time, in this moment, feels less like motion and more like suspension. As if the world is holding still between breaths. And yet, even here, nothing is truly still. Ra continues his journey beneath the horizon. Invisible. Unseen. Moving through the deep passage of night. This is not a disappearance. It is continuation in another form. A movement through a world that is not visible to those above. There is no interruption in his path. Only steady progression through darkness that is part of the same order as light. The Egyptians do not see night as absence. They see it as another half of existence. Another layer of the same cycle. A necessary counterpart. Because without night, morning would not feel like return. Without darkness, light would not feel like renewal. As the night deepens further, even the wind becomes rare. The land feels suspended, held, not abandoned, but contained within stillness. The desert, always present, becomes almost indistinguishable from the sky, its vastness merging with the darkness above. Set remains there, unchanged, as part of that vast boundary. Not active, not still in the sense of absence, but still as permanence, as something that does not shift with time, only exists alongside it. And within this deep night, there is a moment that feels almost like pause. Not a stop in time, but a soft compression of it. Everything feels gathered inward, held gently before release. This is the quiet center of the cycle. The point where nothing is moving toward change yet. But change is already present in potential. The faintest hint of transformation begins far beyond what can be seen. Not yet light. Not yet form. Only intention. Only return waiting to happen. Khepri stirs again in the unseen horizon. The same way it has always happened. The same way it will always happen. And slowly, almost imperceptibly, the darkness begins to soften. Not breaking. Not fading. Only preparing. The stars remain steady for a moment longer. Nud holds everything in place, as she always does. And then, without urgency, the first suggestion of dawn begins again. A shift too subtle to name, but too certain to ignore. The cycle is not restarting. It has never stopped. It is only continuing forward. As it always has. And as it always will. The earliest edge of morning begins again, almost without notice. It is not light yet. Not fully. Only a soft easing of darkness, like the world slowly remembering how to become visible once more. The sky above is still deep, still filled with night, but something subtle has changed. The stillness is no longer completely still. It is beginning to loosen. Nud remains vast across the heavens, her star-filled form unchanged, holding the night gently in place for a few moments longer. But even she feels, in this quiet transition, the approach of return. Far beyond what can be seen, Khepri begins its quiet movement again. Not dramatic. Not sudden. Just steady continuation. The sun, unseen at first, is already on its way back toward the horizon's edge. And as always, the river notices before anything else. The Nile begins to catch the faintest suggestion of light, even before the sky fully changes. A thin silver line appears on its surface. Then soft reflections of gray-blue. The water seems to awaken in layers, as if it is remembering the shape of the day before the day itself fully arrives. Along its banks, nothing is rushed. Even this earliest return of morning is met with calm familiarity. A shift of position. A quiet breath. A slow opening of eyes. Life does not begin here. It continues. Ra rises again, not as an arrival, but as a return that has always been in motion. His light is faint at first, barely distinguishable from the fading night. But it grows steadily, without hesitation, without interruption. The horizon slowly brightens in response. Not all at once, but gradually, as if the world is gently being drawn back into clarity. The fields begin to separate from shadow. Shapes becoming clearer, edges returning. The land does not change. Only its visibility changes. Everything is as it was. Only seen again. In this quiet unfolding, there is a deep sense of balance. Not spoken. Not enforced. But simply present in the way things naturally move. Ma'at is here again. Not as an idea, but as the structure of the moment itself. The predictable return of light. The steady rhythm of night becoming day. The unchanged path of the river beneath it all. In the distance, small movements begin again along the riverbanks. A figure stepping toward water. A container being lifted. A slow walk along familiar paths. The same gestures that have existed for as long as memory allows. And yet they never feel identical. Because time here is not experienced as repetition alone. It is experienced as continuation. Each moment carrying the echo of the ones before it. As the light strengthens, the desert edge becomes faintly visible again. A vast stillness separating itself from the river's life. Set remains within that space, unchanged. Not interfering. Not shifting. Only existing as the boundary between what grows and what does not. Between movement and stillness. Between abundance and emptiness. As the sun rises further, warmth begins to return to the land. Soft at first. Then gradually more steady. The air becomes lighter. More open. The colors of the world deepen again into familiar clarity. Green fields. Golden sand. Blue water. Everything returning to its known form. In villages, the rhythm of life resumes fully now. Not as a restart, but as continuation of what never truly paused. Work begins again. Movement increases. Soft voices return. But still, there is calm in everything. Nothing is rushed. Nothing is forced. Even creation itself feels patient. As if time is always sufficient. As if there is always enough of it to allow things to unfold properly. Ta'a's presence is felt again in this quiet shaping of the world. In the slow forming of objects. In the careful repetition of skilled movement. In the understanding that creation is not a single moment of force, but a long unfolding of intention into form. As the morning strengthens, Ra moves higher into the sky once more. His light spreading evenly across everything below. Not favoring one place over another. Not changing the structure of the world, only revealing it again. And beneath this light, the cycle continues as it always has. Without interruption. Without deviation. Only return. Only flow. Only the steady, endless rhythm of a world that never truly begins and never truly ends. The morning settles fully now into its familiar shape. The light is no longer faint. It is steady and present, spreading across the land with a calm certainty, as if it has always been here and will always remain. The Nile moves beneath it, unchanged in its quiet determination. It does not hurry toward anything. It does not pause for anything. It simply flows, carrying the reflection of sky and time without holding on to either. Along its banks, the world continues its slow unfolding. People move through their routines with practiced ease. Not because they are repeating something mechanical, but because the rhythm itself feels natural, like breathing. A hand sifts grain. A vessel is filled. A path is walked without hesitation. Each action fits into something larger than itself. Something that does not need to be named in order to be understood. Ra continues his journey above, steady and unwavering. His light is now full across the land, soft but complete. It touches everything evenly. The fields, the river, the stone paths, the quiet homes. Nothing is left outside of it. And yet nothing is overwhelmed by it. There is balance in the way it falls. A balance that feels older than thought itself. Ma'at is present again in this still harmony. Not as a force that intervenes, but as the quiet structure that allows everything to remain in place. The predictable return of light. The steady movement of water. The way life unfolds in rhythm rather than chaos. As the day deepens, the land begins to warm once more. But even this warmth feels familiar. Predictable. Gentle in its intensity. Shadows shorten. Colors sharpen. The world becomes clearer in shape, yet softer in feeling. In the villages, movement continues, but always within a calm tempo. There is work, but not urgency. There is activity, but not tension. Everything happens within a rhythm that has never needed to be forced. And in this rhythm, there is something quietly constant. The presence of Happy in the river's continued life. The presence of Ta in the shaping of tools and stone. The presence of Hathor in the quiet ease between moments of labor. They do not arrive or leave. They remain, woven into the very way the world behaves. As the sun climbs higher, the desert remains a silent contrast in the distance. Its vast emptiness unchanged by the passage of time. It does not grow. It does not diminish. It simply exists as it always has. Set remains within that stillness, not as disruption, but as definition. A reminder that the world is not only fullness and growth, but also space and absence. Without one, the other would lose meaning. As midday approaches again, Ra reaches the highest point of his path. The light is strong now, but not harsh. It is steady. Constant. Unmoving in its consistency. The land beneath it rests in that clarity. Everything visible. Everything present. And yet nothing feels forced into attention. It simply exists. Understood without explanation. As the afternoon slowly begins to form again, the light will once more soften. The cycle will continue its gentle turning. Not because it is directed, but because it is the nature of all things here. To move. To return. To shift without breaking. To continue without end. And as this moment holds, the world remains in quiet balance. A single breath within an endless rhythm. A passing shape within something that never stops unfolding. The afternoon arrives quietly, without announcement. The sun has already begun its slow descent, though it is still high enough to hold the land in a steady, golden clarity. There is a subtle change in the light, now less sharp than before, more softened around the edges, as if the day itself is beginning to relax. The Nile carries this change without resistance. It reflects the sky in muted golds and pale blues, shifting gently with every small movement of air. The river does not decide what it becomes. It simply receives what is given to it, moment by moment, without holding on. Along its banks, life continues in its steady rhythm. But something small has changed in the feeling of the day. Not in what people do, but in how the day feels while they do it. Movements are still present. Work is still ongoing. Yet there is a subtle easing, a quiet awareness that the day is now moving toward its later hours. A hand pauses a little longer between tasks. A shadow is noticed where it was not noticed before. A breath is taken more slowly. Ra continues his path across the sky, but now his presence feels slightly more distant than before. Not weaker. Just angled differently. The strength of midday has softened, and with it, the world beneath him begins to ease as well. Fields no longer glow with the intensity of noon. Instead, they hold a warmer, deeper tone. Green softened with gold. Earth warmed but no longer bright. Everything feels slightly heavier, as if the land is settling into itself. In this settling, there is no discomfort. Only recognition. The understanding that the day always moves this way. That nothing remains at its peak forever. And that this too is part of balance. Ma'at is present again in this quiet shift. Not as instruction, but as pattern. The predictable easing of intensity. The gentle return from fullness toward rest. The world does not lose anything in this process. It simply changes expression. In the villages, activity continues, but with less urgency than before. People move more slowly between tasks. They take moments to rest in shade without needing reason. They drink water in small, unhurried sips. Even conversation becomes softer, as if the air itself encourages quietness. In the distance, the desert remains unchanged. Still vast. Still silent. Its emptiness feels even more distinct now against the softer life along the river. Set remains there, as always. A steady presence of contrast. Not interfering with the rhythm of the day, but defining its boundary. The place where growth ends and stillness begins. As afternoon deepens further, the light begins to shift more noticeably. Gold becomes warmer. Shadows stretch longer across the ground. The world begins its slow preparation for evening, even before evening fully arrives. The Nile reflects this transformation in deeper tones now. Amber blending into soft copper, then into hints of fading light. It does not hold any one color for long. It simply passes through them, as it always does. In homes and shaded spaces, people begin to gather more frequently. Not because the day has ended, but because the body naturally responds to the softening of light and heat. Rest becomes more present in small intervals. Stillness becomes easier to enter. And in this growing stillness, Hathor's presence is felt again. In the ease between actions. In the comfort of slowing down. In the gentle feeling that nothing needs to be forced in this moment. There is no urgency to the afternoon. Only continuation. Only gentle transition. As the sun moves closer toward the horizon, the sky begins its familiar transformation once again. Light softens further. The air becomes cooler in contrast to the earlier warmth. Colors begin to shift toward deeper tones. Not yet night. But no longer day in its fullest form. Nut begins to feel more present above, even before the stars fully return. Her vastness stretching quietly across what is becoming evening. Everything moves toward that familiar turning point. That soft threshold where day and night meet without conflict. And within this threshold, the world continues to breathe in its steady rhythm. Nothing breaks. Nothing stops. Everything simply moves forward into its next form. As it always has. As it always will. The evening begins to arrive without a clear moment of arrival. It is not a sudden change. It is a gradual softening of everything that was once bright and defined. The light across the land thins slowly, like a veil being drawn with care rather than force. Shadows lengthen across the fields and the riverbanks. They stretch farther than before, gently touching places that were fully lit only moments ago. The Nile reflects this transformation in a deeper, quieter way now. Its surface shifts from warm copper tones into cooler shades of blue and gray. It does not resist the fading light. It simply carries it, as it has always done. Along its banks, the rhythm of the day begins to settle. Not into silence, but into a softer version of itself. Work slows. Movements become fewer. The urgency of earlier hours dissolves without effort. A tool is placed down and left for tomorrow. A container is carried a little more slowly. A path is walked with less intention to arrive quickly. And in this slowing, there is no emptiness. Only transition. Ra continues his journey toward the horizon. His light is no longer strong and overhead. It is angled now, stretching across the land in long, warm bands. The world feels more spacious in this light. More open. Less tightly defined. Everything appears slightly softer around its edges, as if the world itself is preparing to rest. In this gentle shift, Ma'at is still present. Not as something seen, but as something felt in the consistency of the change. The day always becomes evening in the same way. Not abruptly. Not unpredictably. But through a steady unfolding that never fails. And within that unfolding, there is comfort. Because it means the world does not break. It does not forget its rhythm. It simply moves through it. In the villages, people begin to return toward their homes. Not in haste, but in quiet familiarity. This is not an ending of activity. It is a return to another part of the day. A different kind of presence. A different kind of stillness. Inside homes, spaces are prepared without urgency. Small lamps are readied. Soft materials are placed where rest will come later. Everything is done in calm repetition, shaped by habit rather than instruction. Outside, the sky continues its transformation. Gold fades into deeper amber. Amber becomes muted orange. And slowly, the first hints of violet begin to appear at the edge of the horizon. Nut becomes more visible now, her vast presence slowly reclaiming the sky. Not as something that arrives, but as something that was always there, simply becoming visible again. The stars begin to return one by one. Quiet points of light emerging from the deepening sky. They do not rush into place. They appear gently, steadily, as if each one remembers its position in silence. The Nile reflects this return of night with a calm, steady mirror of movement. Darkness begins to settle into its surface, but it is not heavy. It is smooth. Continuous. Alive in its own way. In this transition, Bastet's presence is felt more clearly within homes. Not as something spoken, but as something known in the feeling of enclosure. In the soft boundary between inside and outside. In the quiet assurance that the night does not enter unprotected spaces. Inside, voices lower. Movements slow. The world becomes smaller in scale, but not in meaning. Above, the moon begins to rise again. Pale and steady. Casting a gentle silver light across the land. Thoth moves with it, silent and watchful, carrying the memory of everything that has passed through the day. Nothing is lost. Nothing is forgotten. Everything is held within the quiet structure of time. And as night deepens further, the desert becomes even more distant in contrast. Its stillness grows more pronounced. Its emptiness more complete. Set remains there, unchanged. A presence that defines the edge of the world's balance. Not interfering with the river's life, but existing beside it, as it always has. The night settles fully now. The river moves in near silence. The wind rests. The fields stand still beneath the sky. And the world becomes almost completely quiet. Not empty, but complete in its stillness. Within this deep night, Ra continues his unseen journey beneath the horizon. Moving through darkness that is not absence, but passage. A steady movement through the hidden part of the world. There is no disruption in this path. Only continuation. Only flow through what cannot be seen. And as the night reaches its deepest point, everything holds still once more. A quiet pause within the endless cycle. A breath before return. And somewhere far beyond sight, the faintest suggestion of change begins again. Not yet morning. Not yet light. Only the certainty that return is already underway. As it always is. As it always will be. The night rests at its deepest point now. It is not darker than before, but it feels fuller, as if the silence itself has grown heavier and more complete. The world is still. Not frozen. Not empty. Just still in a way that holds everything gently in place. The Nile continues to move beneath the darkness. Barely visible now, it carries on as it always does, its presence known more by feeling than sight. A slow, steady current that does not change its mind, does not hesitate, does not stop. Above it, Nut stretches across the sky in her endless form. Her body filled with stars that remain steady and patient. They do not shift or fall. They simply exist, each one holding its quiet place in the vastness above. And within that vastness, the world below rests in its most quiet state. Inside homes, the light is minimal now. Small lamps flicker with soft, steady flames. They do not push back the night. They only exist within it, creating small spaces of warmth surrounded by deep quiet. People rest. Not only in sleep, but in stillness. Their movements have slowed into near silence. Breathing becomes the most consistent rhythm in the room. Slow. Even. Unbroken. There is no sense of urgency anywhere. Only rest. Only continuation of life in its quietest form. Bastet's presence feels strongest here. Not in protection that is active or visible, but in the simple feeling that nothing is required right now. No defense. No effort. Only calm enclosure. Outside, Thoth continues his silent watch beneath the moon. The pale light stretches across the river in thin, soft lines. It does not reveal everything. It reveals only enough. Enough to suggest form. Enough to guide awareness through darkness without disturbance. Time itself feels suspended in this moment. Not stopped, but resting between movements. As if the world has paused between one breath and the next. And yet, even in this stillness, nothing is truly inactive. Ra continues his journey beneath the horizon. Invisible. Unseen. Moving through the hidden path of night that mirrors the visible path of day. There is no difference in motion, only invisibility. He does not disappear. He continues. Through a world that is simply not lit from above at this moment. In this understanding, night is not absence. It is another side of the same existence. A necessary half of a complete rhythm. Because without this darkness, the return of morning would have no meaning. Without this stillness, movement would have no contrast. Without this silence, sound would lose its shape. As the night deepens further, even the smallest sounds fade. The wind becomes almost non-existent. The river's movement feels distant. The land becomes fully quiet. Not empty, but complete. A silence that feels structured rather than accidental. And within this structure, the world holds its breath once more. A soft pause within the endless cycle of time. A moment where everything exists without change. And yet, even here, change is already present. Not visible. Not active. But waiting. Kepri stirs again beyond the horizon. Not as something new. But as something that has always been in motion beneath the stillness. The darkness begins to soften at its edge. Very slightly. Almost imperceptibly. The stars remain in place, but their presence feels gently altered, as if the sky itself is preparing to release them into a different kind of light. Nut holds everything steady, but even her vastness feels like it is part of the transition now. The world is not ending its night. It is preparing to turn. And so, in this quietest point of existence, the cycle prepares once more. Not as a beginning. Not as an ending. But as continuation. As it has always been. As it will always remain. The first change of morning is not something that can be clearly seen. It is something that is felt. A slight easing in the darkness. A quiet softening at the edges of the sky, as if night itself is no longer holding as tightly as before. The stars remain in place for a while longer, steady and unchanged, but there is a subtle difference in how they feel now. Less distant. Less fixed. Almost as if they are beginning to step back into something beyond sight. Nut still stretches across everything above. Her presence is complete, unchanged, and patient as always. But even she seems to carry the quiet anticipation of return within her vast form. Far beyond what can be seen, Khepri begins its steady movement once more. Not as an event. Not as a sudden arrival. But as continuation that has no beginning point, only ongoing motion. The sun is not yet visible. But its approach is already shaping the world. The Nile notices first, as it always does. A faint shift appears across its surface. A thin, almost invisible line of silver forms where darkness begins to loosen. The water reflects something that is not yet light, but not fully night either. A space between states. A gentle threshold. Along the riverbanks, the world remains quiet. But not frozen. There is a subtle return of awareness, like the slow opening of something that has been resting. A hand moves slightly. A body shifts. Breathing becomes more conscious for a moment before settling again. Everything remains calm. Everything remains slow. But the cycle is already turning. Ra begins his ascent once more, though unseen at first. His presence is not sudden. It is gradual, as if the world is remembering him rather than receiving him anew. The horizon begins to lighten in the faintest way. Not enough to define shapes. Only enough to suggest them. Fields are still dark, but their outlines begin to separate from the night. The land is not changing. Only becoming visible again. In this quiet transformation, Ma'at is present without interruption. The return of light follows the same pattern it has always followed. Predictable. Balanced. Unbroken. The night does not resist the day. The day does not push away the night. One simply yields to the other in a rhythm that feels as natural as breath. In the distance, the desert remains unchanged. Still vast. Still silent. Still holding its deep stillness without response to the returning light. Set remains within it, as he always does. A constant presence of contrast. Not opposing the river, but defining its edge. Giving shape to what otherwise would have no boundary. As the first light strengthens slightly, the river begins to reflect more clearly. Darkness is not gone. But it is thinning. The surface of the water shifts between shadow and faint glow, carrying both at once. It does not choose between them. It holds them together for a brief moment. In villages along the river, the first signs of movement begin again. Not hurried. Not immediate. But familiar. A return to form. A return to rhythm. A new cycle beginning without ever fully breaking from the last. Inside homes, the final traces of night are gently released. Small lamps are extinguished or dimmed. Spaces open slowly toward the approaching morning. There is no urgency in this transition. Only acceptance. Only continuation. above, the sky begins to soften further. The stars begin to fade one by one, not disappearing abruptly, but withdrawing slowly into the growing light. Nut remains, but her presence becomes less dominant as the sky prepares to shift. And then, at the edge of the horizon, the first true suggestion of sunrise begins to form. A pale line. A quiet glow. A certainty that does not need confirmation. The cycle is turning again. Not restarting. Not repeating. But continuing. As it always has. As it always will. And within that continuation, the world remains whole. Steady. Balanced. Alive in its endless rhythm between darkness and light. The light of early morning settles gently across the land. It does not arrive with force. It does not announce itself. It simply becomes present, as if it has always been on its way and has finally reached its familiar place. The Nile receives it first, as it always does. A thin silver glow spreads across the water, soft and steady, carrying the memory of night as it slowly gives way to day. Nothing is lost in this transition. Nothing is broken. Only changed in form. Along the riverbanks, the world begins its quiet return. Not a beginning. Not an ending. Only continuation. A hand lifts water. A step moves forward on familiar ground. A door opens into morning air that feels neither new nor old, only present. Ra rises once more, steady in his eternal path. His light spreads evenly across everything it touches, revealing the world without altering its nature. Fields, water, stone, and sand all return to visibility in the same calm rhythm they have always followed. Ma'at remains here, not as something spoken or seen, but as the quiet order behind every movement of the world. The predictable return of light. The steady passing of night. The balance that never needs to be enforced because it never truly leaves. In the distance, the desert remains still. Set remains part of that stillness. The river continues its flow beside it, unchanged in its gentle persistence. Both exist together, not in opposition, but in balance. And above all of it, Nut stretches across the sky, holding night and day within her endless presence, while Thoth observes the passage of time without interruption, and the unseen journey of Ra continues beneath the horizon even as he is seen above it. Everything moves. Everything returns. Everything remains connected. And so the cycle continues without beginning and without end. Not as separate moments, but as one continuous rhythm of existence. A world breathing slowly through light and darkness. Through stillness and motion. Through presence and absence. And in that quiet rhythm, everything simply is.